Forktales, a podcast that feeds the food and beverage world. Forktales is brought to you by Pavone Group and Vigor, a branding and marketing agency for restaurant, beverage, and hospitality brands. Learn more at vigorbranding.com. If you love what we're serving up, please give Forktales a 5-star review on your podcast service of choice. Think of it as a tip for good service.
Hello, everyone. Today's guest is a self-described technovator and someone I've known for a long, long time, a good friend. He's Rob Grimes, and he's the founder and CEO of the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. Rob also has other businesses he's tied to, and he'll talk a little bit about that. And he's obviously not in his house unless he has a casino and slot machines in his house. He's in Vegas. So obviously you're at the CES show. Welcome to the show, Rob. Let's hear a little bit about you.
Thank you. Well, listen, I'm in Vegas, and unfortunately, since we're doing this on a webcam, I can't tell you that what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas, but I can tell you that I got elevators behind me. I got a Starbucks over that way. I got slot machines over that way, and the front desk over here. And when I come out to Vegas, I still get up my normal time, which is about 4:30 in the morning East Coast. So I was up early, and so you just never know what you see coming in and out. So I cannot be responsible for anybody getting out of that elevator or going in the elevator. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so that's where I am. But I am here for CES.
Very cool. Well, depending on who comes out of the elevator with whom, this might be the most watched podcast of all time. So I'm pretty excited about it. So anyway, I've heard, you call yourself a technovator. You want to talk a little bit about that?
So I don't call myself that. That's sort of a name that was given to me. Now, I've been called a lot of things, but I thought that was sort of interesting. And I think it was a combination of putting technology and innovation, which is what I spend most of my time looking at, but at the same time, sort of the entrepreneurial side of helping tech, to come along. So it sort of stuck, so I used it. And anyway, so it's really the combination of that. I'm not really a highly technical person. I can't program. I can't do things like that. But what I do is I spend my time in technology trying to figure out and forecast where I think it's going to go. And then certainly try to predict new trends and sometimes see new companies, which is actually why I'm out here at CES.
Very cool. So, a little refresher for those who aren't familiar with the International Food and Beverage Technology Association and what you and your team do. The IFBTA promotes the use of technology within the food and beverage industry, considering the constant advances in technology. You and I do trends presentations. We speak on trends and what's going on in food and beverage and technology. And it's just technology. That's always the trend. It's always the topic. It's a massive undertaking. How do you begin to focus on that objective?
Well, that's such a big subject, and it's a very large question. So I have blinders on. So my blinders focus on technology as it relates to the hospitality, food service, and retail industry. So you can't look at it all, but I'm very focused on how technology, putting aside my own personal interest and my own personal things that I like to use and do besides that, I'm very focused on how technology might work within our industries. However, what I've learned recently, and I got a feeling that maybe 2024 is the year that yours and my worlds actually collide or combine. And I'll tell you why. Because the word technology is changing. And so as I go see technology, even here at CES, like today, there's a food tech zone. That's going to be about technology of food. How do you cook it? What type of foods you have, that is technology. Yet most people thought technology in my world was point of sale and kiosks and drive-thrus, but it isn't. And your world, working in the CPG world, working with a lot of food products, that is technology as well, and how it's going to be prepared and where it's going to be served. And so I think the interesting thing about it is that technology is evolving as a definition in hospitality, food service, and retail, and that's sort of a very exciting thing to see.
Yeah, I think there's no question. I mean, it's a part of everything we do. And, whether it's the marketing and restaurant world or if it's in the CPG world, it's just paramount to be on top of.
But I've enjoyed the trends that you put out every year, and you put out that report, and you're really talking about food trends. That's something I have to study more now, because as those trends are there, how that food is delivered and where it's delivered, and whether it's a fresh food vending machine, which nobody ever thought that they could do that, or something, all of a sudden, what you're putting out in the trends in food, I need to actually follow in the trends in technology and put those things together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I've heard you say you're a restaurant manager first. I think it's awesome because you worked at Bob's Big Boy. That's where it all started. And so you're seeing needs, obviously it was a long time ago and technology has just evolved. So how does that all tie into tech? How did you end up in tech from that start?
I always believe that puts people in the right place at the right time. Nobody expects to do what they do. And when I talk to students today in hospitality schools and I tell them to do like a focus chart, I tell them your focus chart can't be any more than a year or two out because your life could change, based upon things that happen. So I did start as a restaurant manager. Actually, Roy Rogers, then Bob's Big Boy, both owned by Marriott at the time, and then Marriott Hotels. And then I got asked to do a systems project. And it was supposed to be like 6 months, go to Marriott headquarters. I was working in a Marriott hotel as an assistant restaurant manager in Washington. And it was a 6-month deal. Come to corporate, help us on a systems project. We need somebody who understands operations. And then when you're done, we send you back and you get promoted to restaurant manager. Well, without totally getting into my age or where I might have been at the time, the world of the PC and I collided at Marriott headquarters. And it came out. And so you didn't have to be a programmer anymore to do technology. And so I took over point of sale for Marriott globally, some PMS, and that's actually how I got started. But I was like the first one at corporate headquarters to have a mobile phone. It was in a bag. It was a bag phone. Mm-hmm. Very funny. And I had to convince my boss to pay for it because you had to pay $3 a minute for airtime. I told him I was going to use it for support. But anyway, so I was able to marry two things together. My love for operations and restaurants, which I still am involved in, and then the tech side of it.
Very cool. Very cool. And it's always neat how that all kind of comes together. And I was talking to my daughter this morning. I said, hey, look, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. So if you find things you're really passionate about, you can bring them together and really kind of grow in that. It's just, it's wonderful. And we're very lucky for that.
People should always do things that they're passionate about.
Yeah, no question. And so you said it. You and I both end up speaking a lot of the same things on technology, technology mostly, and me, food and beverage, CPG. And restaurant, but then as you said, they come together. So the last couple trends presentations, I'm sure that you've talked about, that I've talked about, we talk about things like drone delivery and robots in restaurants. And, is there a day that pizza and Chinese food is going to be delivered by drone? And, some of the stuff sounds pie in the sky, but really the way technology is moving, it not necessarily is.
Is that a play on words, pie in the sky?
There you go. Pie. Maybe that should be a company, our next company, the pie in the sky, and we'll do pie delivery.
Yeah. Could be. Pizza pie.
There you go.
It's funny. Certain terms and technology become very popular over time. And so what I tell people is the way to know what's popular is you go to a trade show, and it can be an industry show. It can be a general one like CES. And what I always do is I look above the aisles, and the aisles have signs, and they point in different directions to zones or places you can go. And I look to see what are the big words that are being used. So many years ago, it was one-to-one marketing or big data was a term out there. Drones drones and robotics are sort of interesting. Now, I'm really shocked that you didn't say the word AI because that is the term right now, and I'm getting a little tired of it. But that is the term right now. However, here's an interesting perspective for you about drones specifically. I have said for years that I didn't think that drones were actually going to be the end-all method of delivery. I think they were showy, and I think that they were things that people tested, and they showed the pizza coming up and dropping it. Do I think that drones will be used to deliver to remote places? Yes, as long as you can get the distance, that you can go ahead and control the drone, and as long as you can deal with air traffic control seriously and things like that you have to deal with. But their payload isn't heavy enough to carry really a lot of stuff, and you're going to have food quality issues. Okay, where I really thought, and you'll get the punchline on this in a second, What I really have always thought was going to be the method of delivering stuff was autonomous vehicles. Whether a vehicle is just a little bot that goes on a campus or whether it's a car that drives itself, that's where I thought it was be. So here I am at CES. Do you know that for the last 2 to 3 years at CES, putting aside COVID, that when I went to CES, there was a whole section on drones? Interesting. I haven't seen that section yet. As a matter of fact, when we get off this podcast, I'm going to look it up because I don't think they actually have it as a section right now. Now, robotics is clearly a section that's here. So I think the concept of drones may have been more of a fad than a trend. Now, do I think that drones are going to be big? Sure, because anybody following current events knows the military uses the drones, and that is usually how things get their funding. So I'm not so hot on the drones for delivery. I am very hot on the autonomous vehicles. Even hotter now that I go to CES. There is a whole room at CES of electric vehicles, and half of those electric vehicles that are there, probably more than half, are showing autonomous driving, including how to equip a current car. But not only that, they have smaller vehicles that are autonomous that can do it for delivery. That's the way I think that, delivery is going to go through autonomous vehicles, and the drones are going to be out there. And then you talk about robotics. I also believe in robotics. I think that we're really going to see it more in the back of the house than the front of the house to start for food preparation. That's very clear here at CES with robotic baristas. There's going to be at the NRF show next week a robotic pizza maker that is being used by Walmart. But those are all back of the house. What you don't see is a ton of robots being used for delivery of food to table side. Now, United Airlines put it in their clubs, but it's mainly to be an assistant to somebody, take away dirty dishes or bring something out. We're not seeing that kind of robotics yet. We will, but I think that we will see robotics in the back. So those are two huge technologies, the autonomous and the robotics that I think, will make a difference to us.
Yeah, and let's face it, with talking to all the restaurants and chains out there, I mean, getting employees is a big deal. So, necessity is the mother of invention. The back office, the back end robotics is certainly important to help them with their business and keep their business rolling. So, I think it's a really good point that you make.
Robotics allows us to also open up smaller form factor or self-operated things. And I actually consider vending to be robotics in a box or restaurant in a box. That is robotics when they're preparing fresh food, hamburgers and pizzas that are made fresh in a vending machine, not something, frozen and microwaved or whatever in there. So it's not so much about solving the employee problem. It actually is a revenue generator for opening up new units.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Well, so when we talk about back office or in front of house and back of house, when it comes to restaurant tech, I mean, obviously there's front of house technology. There's the stuff that consumers see. There's the back of the house kitchen technology. Which one is growing faster? And which one is more important, do you think, that the restaurants jump on board?
I think that people will adopt back of the house more. And a lot of the technology is in the back of the house. If you want to talk about employees, it's funny. I saw somebody yesterday, a company out of Taiwan, and they were doing simultaneous translation with earbuds. Now, I've seen this before and I've covered this before, but it always needed a phone that you had to go through the phone to the earbuds. This one did not need that. So we're really getting to the point of like Star Trek or something where they put the earbuds in and you're just instantly talking, conversation with somebody. It's instantly being translated. So I asked the guy, what's your use case for this? So half the people I talk to here at CES, they're all on the consumer side. They never thought about doing anything on the commercial side. So we started talking. Well, he tells me that Honeygrow is using it in the kitchen. Why are they doing that? Because they have workers that don't speak English. And so what they're doing is they're using it in the kitchen to train and to do simultaneous. Now, that's the only one in the U.S. that's doing it. They are doing it, a ton of them, over in China and other places. So I see a lot of technology being used in the back of the house to help prepare foods, to do ventless cooking like sous vide cooking that's out there. I see technology in how the screens and the orders and communicating with the staff in the back of the house being more efficient for doing runner systems and things. The front of the house, the biggest technology change I see in the front of the house, besides having customers do their own ordering, which is in certain things, is really to do the handheld terminals, for taking the order at tableside and the payment is almost, if you think about it, it's almost like the biggest technology change there is, but most of it changes in the back.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it makes sense. Total sense. So, it's interesting. You're at CES. Nation's Restaurant News predicts that 2024 will be the year that restaurant tech industry shrinks as smaller tech startups either shut down or get bought by larger players. Do you think that's a good thing? I mean, because I will say, on this podcast, I mean, I can have a new tech concept every week because there's just so many of them out there. They're everywhere. And I'm sure you're aggregating it, you're understanding it, you're managing it, you're looking at it. So I'm sure you see the same things. Do you think it's good that industry shrinks? What are your feelings there?
So, so as you know, I have a podcast called Accelerate, and I've covered this issue a little bit when I talk about all-in-one systems versus best-of-breed, and all-in-one is where you get everything from one company. Best-of-breed is where you focus on specific areas. Mm-hmm. I think the IFBTA also has something called Exchange, and which is being released next week, which has about 600 different vendors in it, not paid vendors, just sort of listing. I think what we're seeing is a lot of innovation, but the innovation is very, very focused innovation. Like it could be the headsets, or it could be the displays, or it could be, payroll or training or point of sale or loyalty. And so there is consolidation when you have something that comes out of the blue that takes everybody by storm, and the big guys sit there and they go, oh, we missed the boat. I will never forget an FS Tech panel I did where one of the major vendors said, we missed the boat on online ordering. There are now over 30 companies, and this is years ago. He said there's over 30 companies that are doing this now, and they are basically point-of-sale companies because they take payments, and they can do an order. And they said, we missed the boat. So what are they going to do? They have to have online ordering, so they go ahead and they purchase and consolidate the companies. Sometimes it's a matter of two companies that come together that have very specific focused technologies, and you have to put them together to make it work. Like one has this, one has that, and you put them together. So I think it's good. We're going to see a lot more innovation, though. I don't think we're going to see as much shrinkage. And part of the reason for that is the hospitality schools are now offering innovation and entrepreneurship as a course, even Penn State, where even Penn State's doing that. So I think we're going to see more because software is a lot easier to develop than hardware, and we're not hardware dependent anymore. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that I agree with that. I hadn't heard that, and I don't know that I agree with that.
It'll be interesting. I mean, what are you seeing at CES? I mean, I know it's only been one day so far. Is there anything that's really standing out? Anything new that you want to talk about?
Yeah, the general observations of CES, and I'm going to have to look for the statistics on this because I'm not exactly sure. My impression right now is that CES is not as crowded as it has been, number one, in the past. I know that wasn't your question, but but it also could be because Las Vegas opened up a huge new convention center as part of CES. It's connected, and I think they spread out more. So one of the two things that I've noticed last year and this year is a whole pavilion on vehicles. And when I say vehicles, every electric scooter, car, truck, up to big deer farming equipment is electrified. They have their own building, which is amazing to me with all the EV that's in there. And we're not talking about autonomous vehicles now. We're talking about all of even Amazon. The other thing I noticed is the really big companies that traditionally do CES now have two booths. So I see LG Electronics, who I normally see in the main building doing video displays, and phones, now has a separate pavilion in the automotive place where they're showing their cars.
Wow.
So that's two. The expense is amazing. So I see. So I think it could be because you have so much more space that it makes it look like it's not as crowded. But I bet you when the stats come in, it's probably as crowded. I haven't gotten to the wearables area yet, which I'm going to do today. And there's actually a food tech area there. And I'm also looking for what's in the home. I'm a little bit surprised I haven't seen so much in the way of glasses right now. In the past, VR, I went to the gaming area yesterday just to see what was there. The VR and the glasses are not as widely spread as they were in the past. I know that Meta got a lot of play with the glasses that came out from Ray-Ban earlier this year. I don't view those as very functional because there's nothing on the screen. It's basically a GoPro and in a nice looking glass. So I'm looking forward to that. So I was a little surprised I didn't see much of that. The health and wellness area, I'm not seeing as many watches and things as I normally would see. And the robotics, I am seeing robotics here for sure. There's a lot of robotics as they relate to showing mechanics of how they can start to become like a human. So a robotic dog was very interesting. I saw it in several booths. But you always look for those surprises that are here. But there's nothing so far that's jumped out at me except maybe what has been missing.
Interesting. Well, you want to talk a little bit about the IFBTA? I mean, this is something near and dear to you. I mean, let's talk about that a little bit. What is IFBTA going to get from this show? What are you hoping to do? What are your members like? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, our members, the IFBTA, the International Food and Beverage Technology Association, we have a number of different missions. We are not a lobbying organization, although we work with many. So our mission is to promote food and beverage technology, which at the beginning of this podcast, we talked about maybe having a change in definition, expanding. To promote it, to provide education and networking for our members globally. And so that means chapters, that means education, like our certification program. That means events we do at certain industry events where we bring people together who are interested in technology. But it also means partnering with the industry owners, so to speak, the associations like NACS for convenience stores, the NRF or the NRA for restaurants, just partnering with them, the American Hotel Lodging Association, to help them to bring technology because they can't focus on all these areas. So that's our mission, is education and networking of our members. And in that, we recognize that our members are really threefold. One is the individual, the small, the medium, or the independent, which is you're going to find in every state. Then you have your mid-tier and your enterprise, which wants something different entirely. And then you also have the supplier community, and you have the other people that are sort of friends of the community that do things. So we really have to fill a role for all of them that are there. So my mission here at CES is everybody can't be everywhere, although I saw a whole contingent of McDonald's going by on a guided tour yesterday. So not everybody can do that. So I see my role here and a couple other people here as being sort of eyes and ears to predict what's going to happen or what we should be looking at, and then focus on bringing that to the companies at things like NRF or FS Tech or Mertech or the NRA show or places like that. So that's really the role I played. But I will just point out one other thing to you, that I believe that you can't talk about technology. Really, the best way is to show people technology, to show them how it's being used. And coming up live on our website today, tomorrow, certainly by Monday, you're going to be able to actually talk to me on the website. But if you saw me at NRF next week, I would be this stand-up hologram that you could talk to, and I can answer questions for you as if I'm doing it right now, which is a great way of doing it. So we're going to put that kind of technology to use on our own website and other technologies, because we want to be able to show people realistically how it can be used without going cutting edge. We want to be, or bleeding edge. We want to show them the realistic use of it. So that's really our role.
Yeah, you're trying to bring the stuff that's way out there closer home so people can see the actual uses, how they can apply it, and everything else. And that's brilliant. I mean, you bring a lot of
I'm cheap like everybody else, so I don't want to spend a fortune on it. So I want to work with technologies that exist.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you want to talk about your other businesses, anything like that? Or is there anything else from what you're seeing at the show? I mean, as we close this out, like what are some of the things you want to maybe mention?
Yeah. So, I am involved in a lot of businesses. I think I've sort of lost count over time, but personally, I believe I've been involved in about 80 different businesses, but that includes multiple variations of the same business, but in different geographies around the world. So, I've never sold any hardware or software ever. I've always been more of a services kind of person. So today I still own Constrata, which is a consulting company and a services company that does deployments for people, acting as their internal staff. Never want to sell. I don't run those day to day. Because I certainly don't want any conflicts with the IFBTA, which is totally impartial and open to all. And everybody's equal in the IFBTA, all the operators, all the suppliers. And then, I spend some time on some other entrepreneurial ventures trying to help people. But again, those swim lanes of hospitality, food service, retail, services in technology, if it's outside of those lanes, I probably shouldn't be doing it. I am very excited about next week. where we're going to have, for the first time, a food service innovation zone at the National Retail Federation show at the Javits Center. That is a huge show. It is the whole Javits Center. What I find fascinating every year is the bookends. And I will do an article and I will do a podcast, as I do every year, called Tale of Two Cities. Vegas is the first one with CES. NRF is the second one, which is retail, and it's really all retail. So, I spend my time just looking at these things, whether it's Constrata, the IFBTA, or just my personal thing. I will tell you one thing, that sometimes when I talk to people, about what their preferences are in tech, I always like to get a feel for it. And so I'm still trying to figure out how I become that tech influencer. So Samsung will just give me one of their new tri-screen phones that they still haven't brought out after showing it 2 years ago, but they should just give it to me so I can go ahead and use it and just show it to people, like how to use it. So that's the one thing I have yet to achieve.
Yeah, you are kind of like an old school influencer before influencers were cool. That's for sure. There's no question about that. Now a couple personal things here. So talk about this polar plunge thing. You do this every year. Why do you do it? How many years have you been doing this thing?
4 years. So the polar bear plunge in Margate on the Jersey Shore. Since I'm from Philadelphia, I've had a house at Jersey Shore. I don't know. It was just sort of an idea to run in and you run into the water. You got to dive because you got to get over. This year it was like really cold. Normally it hasn't been so cold, and it was really cold. And you had to run out far enough. It wasn't deep enough to do the dive because the waves weren't coming in. So I had to go out, and I'm like coming out, and my ankles and my shins are like just numb. But I've been doing it for 3 years, maybe 4, and it's like 3,000 people. They do it all over the Jersey Shore. You could actually do one like at 10 o'clock, one at 11, one at 12, and one at 1. But it was just something to do. It just seemed like a good idea at the time.
I too. I go to the Jersey Shore, and I don't even go in the water in July because it's still too cold. So I have no desire whatsoever to do that. But I
do want to point out to anybody listening to this podcast, we don't go to the beach. We're going to the shore. And I want to make sure you know that. There is a beach at the shore, but we go to the shore.
Yep, I totally get it. That's a Philly thing. So last question. I ask this of everybody. If you had one final meal, what would you eat and why?
A final meal. Well, I mean, I'm a huge steak fan, but that's like what every prisoner orders for their last meal, right? So I'm not so sure I want to be there. A final meal. That's like really a tough question. I'm sure it would be something like a steak of some sort that was out there, just because I just happen to like steakhouses and steak. Is there a particular steakhouse that you love? It might be a plant-based one, by the way, over time. I did have just a note. I love having conversations with people. So I had a conversation at a function last night with this guy who told me he went vegan, and he asked me what I thought the future of vegan was and whether people would adopt it over time. And my response to him was, this is about tech and food tech. I said, hey, listen, who would have thought 10 years ago that you could go to a Burger King and get a Whopper, that you might not know the difference between a beef Whopper and one made of plant? So my view over time is that steak that I'm eating, and I understand that Leonardo DiCaprio invested in a company that's doing plant-based steak, is they're working on that. And over time, there may be no difference, and I will be eating a steak, and as long as the texture, the taste, the satisfaction is the same, we're going to forget that, over time. And so I don't know if it'll be a plant-based steak for my last meal or whether it'll be, really good. I love independent steakhouses. I have a favorite here, the Golden Steer. Which is a friend, that has that. It started in 1958. He wasn't around then, but it's great. But I just like the old time steakhouses.
Very cool. Very cool. Rob, look, it's always fascinating. It's always a pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you. I really appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of CES, and thank you.
Well, no, it's a pleasure. I know I see you several times during the year, and it always turns out to be a good conversation. It's a lot of ideas. And actually, even this conversation today just gave me a few thoughts that I might want to take a look at. So
me too.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob.